Yo, what up, a-holes? Thank you for tuning into the Holistic A-Hole podcast. My name is Erik Levi, and I'm the Holistic A-Hole. Thank you for tuning in here on a lovely Friday morning or afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you're ready for the weekend. It's going down. It's going down. This weekend's the weekend, baby. Everyone's getting laid. Everyone's getting famous. That's all that's happening. Hope you're having a good one, man. Just wanted to drop a little pre-weekend a-hole wisdom on you here to set you off in your travels and adventures. This actually was inspired by, or this thought I had was inspired from a book that I'm reading right now called Influence. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. Especially if you're anywhere in like the business world, if you sell anything, especially if you sell anything, market anything, or if you're just like trying to make yourself like a brand or, whatever you're doing where you're going to be interacting with people and it's very important that you get your way. This is a great book to read. I would personally put it up there with some of the best books written in maybe the last 20 years as far as like personal development and business goes. So I'm a little bit through the book here, and Cialdini, did I say that? It was written by a guy named Robert Cialdini. Influence is written by a guy named Robert Cialdini. Great author. Actually a psychology professor at my alma mater, Arizona State University, the water slides of fine institutions. It's a great book, and Cialdini is talking about, this idea of people who are consistent. People have this need to be consistent, and it's a real interesting concept, right? Because basically what he's saying is that as people, we make a decision at some point along the way, and it could be, it's in every sector of our life. It could be you make a decision on like a sports team to root for. And so, here in New York, people are Jets and Giants fans, especially the Jets fans. They decided a long time ago they're going to be Jets fans, and they cannot waver from that now. No matter how bad the team is consistently, you can't not be a Jets fan. You can totally do it. A lot of people move to other cities, in fact, and they're thousands of miles away from New York, and they're still Jets fans. And the Jets never win. I'm a Cardinals fan. I feel this pain every single year. I think Seinfeld has the joke, you're not rooting for teams, you're rooting for the uniform. You know what I mean? You're just rooting for the team that year, that uniform. You're rooting for laundry. That's what rooting for sports is in 2018. Nobody's on the same team more than a couple years anymore. There's no loyalty. You're just rooting for a colored jersey or, your laundry. It's great. It's perfect. Or it could be, a political party. This, of course, is the hot one right now. Maybe at some point you decided you were Democrat, and no matter how bad the Democratic Party gets, you dug your heels in, and you're just going to be a Democrat. Same thing with Republicans. There's a lot of people who are Republican who are like, I refuse to not be Republican, even if the Republicans are terrible, which, most of them are. You're still supportive of that team. And, you do it with friends. You do it with lovers. You do it with restaurants. You do it with diets. How many people are vegan or keto and are just hitting that point where it's like, man, this isn't working, but I can't not do this now. It's everything, right? And in fact, this is like a trait that marketers and anybody trying to sell you something, they actually, use this to their advantage of you. So it really doesn't pay to begin with to be so dug in on a thing, to the point where I think it's very important that you have the ability to change your mind. I don't think there's anything wrong with being able to change your mind. This idea of being like consistent, it's real interesting, and the example of how it can be exploited in people is actually given by Cialdini in the book, where he's talking about Korean War prisoners, right? Korean War prisoners of war, like American prisoners of war. So basically, what would happen is the Chinese, I believe it was the Chinese, would capture Americans in the war, and this is in the Korean War, like in the 1950s, right? I know very little about the Korean War, by the way. So if I butcher some facts here, please, save your fingers for writing a blog. It's going to be okay. There was no harm, no foul. But basically, these Korean prisoners or these Chinese captors would hold the Americans hostage, and basically what they would do is they would get the Americans. They wanted the Americans to claim like allegiance to China, or like that communism is good and capitalism is bad, or that America is evil or bad and communism's good. And so to do that, because it would also change the psychology of the prisoners, and they wouldn't want to go back and be with the Americans, or So what they would do is they would have the Americans, they would let them write letters home and say, yeah, you can write your family or whatever, and none of those letters would get sent. The Koreans would just take them and would read them and would see like what the Americans are talking about. So they learned a lot about Americans through American prisoners sending these letters, or trying to send these letters back home, to the point where the Americans started catching on, and they were kind of figuring out that if you wrote like anti-communist stuff, they would, they wouldn't let your stuff through. But if you started to like put on the note, you would say things like, "Oh, well, the Chinese, they're actually not bad. This communism thing is actually kind of okay." They would let the letters go through, and basically, people at home would get these letters, and then they would see that, oh my God, like my brother or my son or my husband or whoever it was, they think communism's good. And this was like their way of spreading propaganda. It's crazy. And so what they did within the camp too is they would offer awards to prisoners. They'd be like, we'll give you like 3 cigarettes, or we'll give you like an extra bowl of rice or something, because they were starving and they needed to smoke. And they would say, you'll get this if we're going to have an essay contest, and the person who writes the best about how much they love communism, you get the award of what do you call it? Of the cigarettes and the rice. So they would have these soldiers write these letters to the Korean captors, and the Koreans would get them. And then, they would also pass them around to the other prisoners, and they'd be like, see, everybody here thinks communism's a good idea. So why don't you think that communism's a good idea? And, the people would see that, and they'd be like, oh, well, then I guess, I guess communism's okay. And so now they believe communism's okay. This is like it's like a very kind of twisted thing. They just count on you to basically count on a point of view that you can't control, that's out of your control. So it's the same thing that happens here in America. It's like we're just getting used by the people, and sometimes not all for bad. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's good to be connected into into a belief system. It can be uplifting. It can be a community. It can also be used for bad. And in the case of like what is happening in the health world, in the political world, I mean, just everything, man. Everybody has the heels dug in, and no matter. Oh, and that was like the whole point with the communism thing. By the way, sorry, I mean to go back to this because I was feeling like I missed a very important part. But that was the thing about the Korean communism, because they would get the people to basically say that communism was good, and I mean, even though communism was clearly bad, like people were getting murdered, Tiananmen Square, it was just awful for so many people in China, in Russia, but yet they would get people to basically believe it off of like this weird group mind think phenomenon, or just writing it down, just writing it down so many times. People are now like, oh, well, yeah, like I guess communism is good. And now no matter what happens that's bad in communism, you'll never not think that communism wasn't good. So it's the same thing that's happening here with the whole everything political, everything, the diet crazes, the just obsession about weight loss and counting calories and taking supplements that don't even work, and all this wrong shit is happening because of this dynamic. So my point with all this is, don't be afraid to change your mind. Don't be so locked into your beliefs that you can't like back out. Like, I've changed my mind so much in the last year alone, and it's hard, man. It really is like one of the hardest things to do, to like have to basically look at stuff that you built your whole identity around, that you built so much of your surrounding and your everyday routine, and it's fucking crazy because you're so comfortable in that spot, to maybe just question like what it is that's happening around you and why it's happening. And at some point to come to that realization that it's a choice you're making in your life somewhere, and you just gotta see it and be honest and be like what, why, what is my why right now? Why am I thinking like this? Why am I doing this? Why am I around these people? All of which bring my life no value. I'm just doing it because it's automatic at this point. It's just a reflex. It's muscle memory to go do this thing that just keeps bringing me just nothing, just nothing. Like, maybe it could just be like going to the clubs, going to the bars. Like, that shit gets old after a while. But people just will do it, and you'll sit there, you'll go to these bars, people are just miserable sometimes, and it's just because you just never asked yourself, why do I have to do this? It's just, I guess it's just the Friday night thing, People, it's like the dude who keeps going back to his, the high school football games. He's now in his early 30s. It's like, what are you doing? Maybe that's fun for some people. I don't know if that's the best example, but you know what I'm talking about. You're probably thinking of, your thing right now. Dude, we all have them. So as you head out for the weekend, I hope this wasn't a bummer for you. I know we talked about some kind of bummerish things, but I hope this was fun. I hope you agree, and if you don't agree, well, change your mind, because you're wrong and I'm right. And then in a couple months I'll be like, no, man, you were right and I was totally wrong. God damn it! I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, go on iTunes, leave it 5 stars, subscribe, and find Holistic A-Hole on all the social mediums, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and join the Holistic A-Holes Facebook group. It's awesome. It's the best time you're going to have on Facebook. And keep listening for more pods coming your way. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.